Let's identify linear function graphs using the coefficient of x and the constant. Problem number 3. The linear function f of x equals negative 3x plus 5. Step number 1. Determine whether the function graph is increasing or decreasing. The coefficient of x in this graph is negative 3. Because it is a negative value, we know that the function graph is decreasing because the slope is negative. Taking a look at the graph options, A is a decreasing graph, B is an increasing graph, C and D are also decreasing graphs, telling us immediately that option B is not going to be correct because this graph has a slope that is increasing. How did we determine whether the function graph is increasing or decreasing? We determined that the function graph was decreasing because it has a negative coefficient of x value. Step number 2. Find where the function graph crosses the f of x axis. The constant for this function is positive 5. That means that the function graph crosses the f of x axis at the ordered pair 0, positive 5. Graph A crosses at 0, positive 5. Graph C crosses at 0, negative 2. Graph D crosses at 0, positive 5. So we can now eliminate graph C since this function graph crosses the f of x axis at 0, negative 2, and we know that our function must cross at 0, positive 5. We have options A and D remaining. Step 3. Describe the slope movement. We use the coefficient of x, but we use it in fraction form. This one does not show a fraction. We just make this a fraction by putting this integer over 1. We now have a numerator, negative 3, and a denominator, 1, so we can now describe the slope movement. The function graph's slope movement is down 3, down because of the negative, and 3 because of the numerator, and 1 to the right. Graph A, starting from the point where the graph crosses the f of x axis, if we were to go down 3 and 1 to the right, this location is not on the graph. Graph D, starting from the f of x axis crossing point, if we go down 3 and over 1, then we are back on the graph. And if we were to repeat that, down 3 over 1, we are on the graph again. Down 3 over 1, we are on the graph again. Down 3 over 1, we are on the graph again. This slope movement will always put us back on the graph as we move down 3 over 1. So we know that D is the linear function graph that goes with our linear function in problem number 3. How did we describe the slope movement? In problem number 3, to describe the slope movement, we had to make sure that we put in a denominator of positive 1 when the coefficient of x was a regular integer, not a fraction. We know the graph is going down because of the negative, it's going down 3 because of the numerator, and it's going 1 to the right because of the denominator. You are now ready to identify the linear function graph for problem number 4.